What's going on, guys? My name is Steve. Thank you for stopping by my channel. Today we're going to be reacting to London versus New York City, city comparison. I came across this video and I thought it'd be really interesting to learn about some of the differences and the similarities between London and New York City. Out of all the large cities in the US, I think New York City is probably the one that I spent the most time in. Granted, it's been well over a decade since I actually visited New York City, but in my teens and in my early 20s, I spent quite a bit of time up there. It's so different from what I'm used to in my small community. So visiting a city like New York, while I could never see myself living in such a busy area, it was always enjoyable to visit because there's so much going on and compared to my small town that I grew up in. And even now I live in the Midwest at this point, but I still live in a very small community. I've never actually lived in a large city. I've just visited them. But anyways, guys, because I do know a bit about New York City compared to other cities in the US, and because New York City is our largest city and London is the UK's largest city, I think that comparing the two will actually give me a good idea of what London is actually like in some ways. So guys, I don't know what to expect here, so let's just go ahead and dive in and check out London versus New York City.
London versus New York City, city comparison. Hello, won't it be great to do a city comparison here? Okay, let's start with London versus New York City comparison. In the course of this comparison, we shall see similarities and differences between living in London and living in New York City. Let me quickly tell you that this is not just a living comparison, but a city comparison. Therefore, while we would love to be as detailed as we can be, please don't feel let down when certain details about living conditions are missing. Nevertheless, here's a highlight of what we think you should know about these two iconic and fanciful cities that boast wonderful foods, classical theatre, exotic lifestyle and state-of-the-art technologies. Please enjoy the city comparison, London versus New York City. Size. London is the largest city of England and the United Kingdom. Sometimes referred to as the City of London and the Square Mile, the city has an area of 2 square miles. But this is smaller than the area known as the Greater London, which is about 607 square miles, which incorporates 32 boroughs.
32 boroughs?
New York City, or NYC, often simply called New York, is the most populous city in the United States. The city, located in the southern part of New York State, the 24th largest city in the US, sits on a total area of 300.46 square miles. New York City is made up of 5 boroughs, namely the Bronx, Brooklyn, Queens, Staten Island and Manhattan. Population. What about the population of the two cities? The population of London is estimated to be 8.9 million, while that of New York City is 8.8 million. This means more people are living in London than those living in New York City.
Dude, man, I would have never guessed that. I knew London was a big city. I knew that it was, the largest city in the UK, but I would have never guessed that it had a larger population, granted by about 100,000 than New York City did. I would also never would have thought that it was actually larger in square mileage either, but it is. Wow.
Did you notice that we mentioned that the figures are just an estimate? The population of New York City is derived from US Census data analysis.
And the 32
London area is almost double that of
NYC,
the population figures for both cities are pretty close. London is only a couple of hundreds of thousand more populous than New York. For that reason, London's population density of 11,407 people per square mile is lower than New York City's. NYC, which is also the most densely populated major city in the US, has a population density of 27,000 people per square mile.
Wow. Yeah, it always felt busy when I visited. I always enjoyed visiting, but it always felt busy. I was curious, so was 32 boroughs in London? That's crazy. So are each of those boroughs, distinctly different? Like if you go to New York and you go to Queens versus, Brooklyn, you're definitely going to notice the difference, in a lot of different things. Is that the same way it is in London between boroughs?
London is bigger and more populous than New York City. More people are living on the streets of New York than you would find on London's streets. This is because more New Yorkers are packed and cramped into a smaller area than Londoners. People. This can be a bit controversial, but that's what has been observed about the people who live in both cities. Londoners, as those living in London are called, are polite, though other people see them as being too reserved or even haughty. They're perceived by foreigners as giggly and judgmental. It remains to be proved whether they see themselves in that light. People living in London are keen on structure and politeness in dressing. However, they can be less formal and can even unbutton their shirts at the pub. You can expect them to give you a long French stare if you're an oddball. One beautiful thing about the people living in London is the preservation of tradition. Tea has remained tea since millenniums, and lawyers still appear in white wigs. On the other hand,
true, man.
New Yorkers, as people living in New York
somewhere
are called, can be erratic, impulsive, but confident. Yet this produces the best result. As a matter of fact, if you don't have a measure of ruggedness or can't cope with furor, the non-stop city of New York is probably not for you. You can be called out for almost anything by New Yorkers.
That is true.
New York is for the determined people. The city, however, is designed and run to allow everyone to get the best. Thus, nothing is depriving anyone of good food, dark humour, and new experiences if you strive. Cleanliness. Both cities have a measure of struggles with dirt. It is understandable and expected of big cities. But in this city comparison, we have to give it to London. Why? This is not because New Yorkers have less cleaning and maintenance culture than Londoners. The fact is that waste management is challenging in most populous cities, and the higher the population density of a city, the more challenging it is to maintain high a standard of cleanliness and orderliness, even in cities with large bodies of water around it. Food.
That reminds me of when I visited New York City. I was in Manhattan sometime in my early teens and with my dad. And I noticed that we were walking and all of a sudden on one side of the street, you would see bags of trash. It was at nighttime. It was just bags of trash. And I was told that they only pick up like one side of the street on a particular day. And so everybody puts their trash out, but it was like crazy. I had never seen that much trash on the side of a street in bags and stuff. I don't know if that still happens like that, but it's just a memory that will always stick in my head for some reason. I don't know why.
Food. As far as food is concerned, London is none of a big grab and go thing. Well, we mentioned tea earlier. You can't take that away from London. Coffee and pastry are surely for you to take away in the morning. But when it comes to lunch and dinner, London wants you to sit in and eat. There are fantastic restaurants in London where you can have favourite meals which consist of Indian cuisines rich in curry. There is also pub fare with locally raised and farmed foods. Unfortunately, many of the tourists do not know where to go to get the food they desire to eat, even while these foods are readily available and waiting for them somewhere in the city. You can find even your native food there if you can find your way to where it is. A new food scene is the fish and chips pub fare outside of the touristy.
Yes.
It is entirely new and trendy. Check out also Michelin star restaurants in every neighborhood.
Yes. Fish and chips, man. I don't get that where I'm at. Like, where I'm from, I could, because it's much closer to the ocean, because I lived on the East Coast, the Southeast Coast. But now I'm in the Midwest. And so you can imagine I'm not really near the ocean anymore. And so fish is very hard to come by, at least ocean fish. And so I can't tell you last time I actually had some good fried fish. I miss it so much. It's definitely something I look forward to trying when I visit the UK. And it's just one of those quintessential dishes from the UK. If someone asked you to think of a British dish, you're probably going to think fish and chips first thing. I don't know why that is. I guess because, you live on an island and so fish is so readily available. But one thing that I've mentioned before on a previous video a while back was that I've never had curry. I have no idea what it's like. We don't really have any Indian restaurants nearby. And it's just not something that my family's ever, really ever had. I don't think my mom, I think she's probably never had curry. I don't think my sisters had curry. My wife has never had curry. I know that. But it's just one of those things I've never had the opportunity to try. And I would definitely try it. I have no idea what it would be like, but look forward to giving it a try. I guess London sounds like a good place to try curry for the first time.
Now to NYC. In New York City, foodies will thank their stars. This is the headquarters of grab-and-go food.
Yeah,
There
that's
is
true.
just something for everyone, from bagels to slices. For instance, the infamous New York slice can't
Pizza.
be strange to anyone who has ever moved to New York. There is a giant piece of pizza with the perfect cheese. It's just for a few bucks. If you travel to enjoy dinner in New York, you're in for a delightful sight. There are top
Yeah,
restaurants where you can book your order in advance. The fact is that there's something for everyone in every street. A restaurant will be there that serves your need. Is it the one that exclusively makes bao, or one's thriving on Italian fusion? New York City is simply unbeatable.
yeah, you definitely have to get yourself a some New York pizza when New York City pizza or a New York slice when you get there. Definitely good pizza from what I remember. Like I said, it's been a while since I visited, but and another thing that's very popular, for some reason, I don't know why they're so popular, but the hot dog stands, that seems to be a very popular thing in New York. And just sandwiches in general seem to be a popular thing for some reason.
Transportation. We have to tell you that it is difficult to determine which one is better between the two cities when it comes to public transportation.
They both have
Taking a taxi in London, for
good
instance,
subways,
will cost you a
right?
nice dinner. And taking a taxi in New York City can be worse than walking the whole journey.
Yeah, it's very
London
true.
still prides itself in being a pioneer of the underground train service called the Tube. The London Underground remains unmatched to date. In New York City, the subway or metro can be a better way of getting around. It is faster than many other ways of getting around in NYC. One downside to this and other forms of public transportation in London is that they close early on normal days. Hardly do they work past
that's
midnight.
true.
But in New York City, public transport is 24/7.
I had forgot about that. I watched a video a while back on the London Tube. I'm trying to say it like you got tube. People were saying I need to say it with a CH, tube. Anyway, I thought that was interesting that I think they closed at like midnight and opened back up at 5 or 6 a.m. I don't remember if that was every day, but that is definitely different from New York. You can get on the subway any time of day, at least from what I remember. But I always enjoyed the New York City subway. And so definitely experience I look forward to when I visit London and visiting the underground. I think it's going to be really fun. Coming from a place to where I have no experience with subways or underground transportation where I'm from. Like I said, I grew up in a small town, and even the larger city nearest to me didn't have a subway of any type. So they had decent public transportation, but for taxis taxis really not I guess it's a public transportation kind of, but buses and things like that, but no subways there. But let's continue.
Shopping. London is great for early risers, as there are many unique coffee shops and handmade breakfasts to enjoy when you want to explore those famous museums. Bear in mind that London is just a stone throw away from the famous shopping centres of the world, such as Paris, Amsterdam and Madrid.
That's true.
You will get many of those top
don't know how close,
boutique
but I know
brands when shopping
quite-
in
quite
London.
close.
Just anything you are looking for, including even dinosaur fossils, those shops will get them for you. New York City is a city that never sleeps.
Never sleeps, yeah.
Everywhere, any time of the day. As mentioned earlier, there are unique restaurants, ice coffee shops, and vintage stores in every neighborhood that has its own cultural norms and styles, especially in Williamsburg. If you'd love to shop and have dinner, New York can be a more welcoming place to visit. London wins shopping in this city comparison. Yes, NYC
I
has
had that
fantastic
feeling that'd be the
shopping,
case.
but those shops can't stand what London has to offer. Leisure.
Granted, I'm definitely not someone who's like a fashion person, man. I literally just like just a plain t-shirt, man. T-shirt, a ball cap, jeans when it's cooler, and just a pair of shorts during the rest of the year when it's warmer. I like comfortable clothes. Don't care about fashion at all. I think if I had that type of like an office type job and where I needed to dress up or whatever, I probably would, pay a little more attention to it, but it's just not my thing. But when I think about fashion, if I think about the word fashion, there's two places that come to mind. And I know New York is part of that. New York does have a fashion scene, but for me, I think of Paris, France, and London. Those are the two places. So I don't know why, but I think if people love to shop, especially for things like clothes, watches, things like that, New York City in the US is a good place to go, I'm sure. But for some reason in my head, I feel like London is by far the best place you can go. At least top 2 or 3 in the world, in my opinion, without knowing too much about it. That's just the perception I have in my head.
Yeah.
Leisure.
A good way to illustrate this is the availability of parks. There are more green spaces in London than in New York. All space in this densely populated city has been occupied. In fact, the only park in Manhattan is Central Park. But in London, you have open spaces and parks. Hyde Park and St James's Park are just examples of world-renowned parks. Now, what is your take? London versus New York City. Which one is better? The choice is tough, right? In summary, London is beautiful with the most famous landmarks in the world, while New York City is more exciting and fun-filled. Please, we would love to have your opinion of the two cities.
As someone I've been to New York, but I've never been to London, obviously. I can only go off what I've heard and whatnot. I think there's reasons to go to both, I guess, but I've been to New York City a number of times. So at this point, I just look forward to visiting London. I look forward to visiting these places that I know that my ancestors have been. I look forward to seeing the immense history. I mean, so much beautiful architecture. Don't get me wrong. Obviously, New York City has some beautiful architecture, beautiful buildings, but New York City cannot beat the actual timeline of history that London has. And that's something I absolutely look forward to. And just, beautiful statues. And I had no idea. Well, I had heard that there was a nice park, Hyde Park. Can't remember. But that's something I really haven't looked into. And it's, this reminded me, I want to look into some of the parks in London because, one of my favorite things about New York City is Central Park. It's just awesome that, within the middle of this huge city with all these skyscrapers and so busy and just so much noise and just happenings, you can go right to the center of the city and you have this beautiful green space and you have people there playing some music and people exercising. You can actually go out there and you can just, kind of get some alone time, if you will, even there, it's obviously going to be busy, but still, like compared to the rest of the city, it's just it's a great place to go to get that nature, I guess, if you want to call it that. And if I'm remembering correctly, I think Central Park is it a half a mile wide by, is it a mile or 3 miles? I think it's actually 3 miles long. Someone that knows. Maybe it's from New York, could correct me on that or tell me if I was correct on that. So I'm curious about now, like, how big are the parks in London? Some of those green spaces. I'm curious if any compare to the size of Central Park. But anyways, guys, I thought this was an interesting comparison. Some of this was obviously, I obviously knew about New York City, but most of it I didn't know about London. But definitely, a lot of people have told me that I need to explore other places in the UK more than London. I agree. It's just London is so vast and there's so much stuff going on here, so much history that I think it could literally take you, it would take you months and months to explore all the even major things within London. But I do need to explore other areas outside of London as well, because when it's come to exploring places in the UK, London has been the main city that I've been exploring. Granted, I haven't. This is the first time I've learned a number of these just generalized facts, And so, anyways, guys, I thought this was an interesting list. Thank you so much for stopping by. Please click that like button. Feel free to drop your comments or suggestions about this video or others, and don't forget to subscribe to continue to follow me on my journey to discover my British and Irish ancestry. Until next time, guys, peace.